All right, so today we're going to do a deep dive into this learning path for Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central developers.
Okay.
Our source material is this YouTube video by Dr. Gomathi, and she kind of maps out this roadmap for becoming like a Business Central technical consultant.
Interesting.
So if you're at all interested in that kind of career, this will be pretty interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
One of the things that I really liked right off the bat was how she breaks this whole learning journey down into these 3 modules.
Okay.
Basic, intermediate, and advanced.
I like that.
Yeah, it's a really nice way to kind of break down a complex topic.
Yeah, for sure. Especially when you're just starting out.
Exactly.
It can be really overwhelming to just dive right in.
Yeah, and she's really emphasizing hands-on learning right away.
Oh, cool.
Even in the basic module, she's like, download, install, run your first AL program.
I like that. Get right into it.
Yeah.
It's the best way to learn.
For sure.
When you actually apply it.
Yeah. So before we get into like the specifics of each module, I was curious.
Yeah.
For someone who's totally new to this, what does a Business Central developer even do?
Right.
Like in a company, what's their role?
Yeah, so they kind of act as the bridge between like the business needs and the technical solutions.
Okay.
So you've got these business people that are like, hey, we want to manage inventory this way, or we want to track sales this way.
Right.
And the Business Central developer's job is to actually build that.
Interesting.
Like within Business Central. So it's almost like building a house.
Okay.
You know, the business users are like the clients that say, hey, we want our house to look like this.
Yeah.
And then the Business Central developer is like the architect that actually makes it happen.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Yeah.
So speaking of building, Dr. Gomathi's basic level jumps into these like Business Central objects.
Okay.
Like tables, pages, reports, these like core elements. So in that house building metaphor, what are those like?
Right. So you can think of tables as the foundation. That's where all the data is stored.
So like customer info, product details.
Exactly. All of that stuff.
Okay.
And then pages are like the walls and the windows.
Okay.
That's how people actually interact with the system.
So like the user interface.
Exactly. So things like entering data viewing reports, navigating around.
Okay.
And then reports are like the blueprints.
Okay.
It gives you like a structured view of the data, you know, like summaries and stuff for making decisions.
So you're saying mastering these objects is like super important for anyone who wants to become a Business Central developer.
Absolutely. It's like if you don't know these basic building blocks, you're not going to be able to build anything.
Right. It's like trying to build a house without knowing what a brick is.
Exactly.
All right. So we've got the foundation. We're familiar with the basic tools and objects. What's next?
Okay. So once you've got those basics down, you got to dive deeper into the actual coding language, AL.
Okay.
That's where the intermediate level comes in.
All right.
And Dr. Gomathi calls this section deep dive into AL, which is pretty accurate.
Deep dive. Okay.
Yeah. This is where you get into the nitty-gritty of how to actually write code that makes Business Central work.
So that sounds pretty intense. Is AL like a completely different language from other programming languages?
It's got its own quirks, but a lot of the concepts are the same.
Okay.
Like, you know, variables, data types, loops, conditional statements.
Right.
Like those are all things you'll find in pretty much any programming language.
Okay, so if someone's dabbled in like JavaScript or Python before, is that helpful?
Yeah, definitely. It gives you a head start.
Okay.
But even if you're starting from scratch, Dr. Gomathi does a good job explaining everything.
Okay, cool. And I noticed that Dr. Gomathi focuses a lot on practical application, even within this intermediate level.
Right.
She talks about different types of functions like validation functions and datetime functions. Why are those function types so important?
They're essential for building like robust applications.
Okay.
Imagine you're building a system to manage customer orders. You wouldn't want someone to be able to accidentally enter an order with a past date.
No, that would mess things up.
Right. And that's where validation functions come in.
Okay.
They check the data to make sure it meets certain criteria.
So they're like error checking mechanisms built right into the code.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. We can see how that would be really important in a business context.
Yeah, definitely.
What about these datetime functions?
So Business Central deals with a lot of time-sensitive data.
Makes sense.
Order dates, delivery dates, payment deadlines, all that stuff.
So being able to work with dates and times is crucial.
Yeah, you got to be able to calculate them accurately.
Okay, so we laid the groundwork with the basic level.
Right.
We delved into the code itself with the intermediate level. Now, I'm guessing things are going to get even more complex with the advanced level.
Yeah, you could say that.
Okay.
This is where things get really interesting,
Right.
and where you can really set yourself apart as a developer.
I'm intrigued.
We're talking about XML Port web services designing efficient systems.
Wow. Okay, those sound pretty intimidating. Can you break those down a little bit for us?
Sure.
Like, what's XML Port all about?
So you know how migrating data from one system to another can be a huge pain?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like if you're switching from an old accounting system to Business Central, you don't want to manually re-enter all your customer data.
No way.
That's where XML Port comes in.
Okay.
It lets you import and export data using XML files.
So it's like a universal translator for data?
Kind of, but it's not just drag and drop.
Yeah.
You need to structure the data correctly using XML schemas.
That sounds complicated.
It can be, but it's a lifesaver once you get the hang of it.
Okay, so what about web services?
So web services allow Business Central to talk to other applications over the internet.
Okay.
So you've got Business Central managing your finances.
Right.
You've got your e-commerce platform handling online sales. And you've got your shipping software taking care of logistics.
Oh.
Web services let these different systems talk to each other.
Interesting.
They share data and automate processes.
So it's like Business Central becomes the control center for all your business operations.
Exactly. It's all connected.
But with all this interconnectedness, things could get pretty messy,
Right.
right?
For sure.
That's where this idea of efficient designing comes in.
Right.
It's not just about making things work, it's about making them work well.
Exactly. And making sure they'll continue to work well as your business grows.
Okay, so it's about writing clean, maintainable code
Right.
and making sure the system can handle a lot of data.
Yeah, because a poorly designed system can really slow things down.
Yeah, and nobody wants that.
Definitely not.
So it sounds like Business Central development is about more than just coding
It is. You need to understand the big picture.
and how all the pieces fit together.
Exactly.
This is really fascinating stuff.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool field.
And it sounds like we're just scratching the surface of what the advanced level has to offer.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot more to explore.
When we come back, I'd love to dive deeper into those advanced concepts
Sounds good.
and talk about what kind of projects someone could build with this level of knowledge.
I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, so we're back,
All right.
ready to tackle those advanced Business Central development concepts.
Yeah, let's do it.
You mentioned XML Port earlier.
Yeah.
Sounded like a real lifesaver,
It can be.
but also kind of tricky to master.
Yeah, there are definitely some nuances to it.
What's something that someone should know about XML Port that maybe isn't super obvious right away?
One thing that trips people up is data validation.
Oh, okay.
Even when you're importing data,
You mean like you think if it's coming from another system, it's already good to go?
you'd think so, right?
Yeah.
But it's not always the case.
So you could end up with a bunch of bad data in your system.
Yeah, if you're not careful.
XML Port doesn't automatically check for things like duplicate records
Oh, I see.
or invalid data types.
So you really got to build in those validation checks. Yeah, it's like having a bouncer at the door,
Okay.
making sure only the right stuff gets in.
Makes sense. All right, let's shift gears and talk about web services for a bit.
Okay.
You said they allow Business Central to communicate with other applications.
Right.
But can you give me like a real world example?
Sure. Imagine you're running an online store
Okay.
and you're using Business Central to manage your inventory. Every time someone places an order on your website,
Huh.
you can use a web service to send that order info straight to Business Central.
Okay.
And then Business Central can update your stock levels,
Oh, wow.
generate a packing slip, trigger the shipping process all automatically.
All about automation.
Yeah, keeping everything in sync.
That's pretty impressive.
It can be really powerful.
But I bet setting up those web service integrations can be tricky.
It can be, yeah.
It's not just about the code, right?
No, you need to understand the different protocols and standards involved.
Oh, right. Like REST and SOAP.
Exactly, and you need to be able to troubleshoot any problems that come up.
All right. Last but not least, let's talk about efficient designing.
Okay,
This is obviously important for any kind of software development.
right.
But is there anything specific to keep in mind when it comes to Business Central?
One thing that's unique about Business Central
Yeah.
is that it's super customizable,
Okay.
which is great in a lot of ways.
Yeah, you've got a lot of flexibility.
Right, but it also means you got to be careful.
Careful of what?
You don't want to create a system that's too complex.
Oh, like a Frankenstein's monster?
Exactly, something that's a nightmare to maintain.
So you're saying it's tempting to over-customize?
It can be. Yeah, it's easy to get carried away.
Adding all these bells and whistles.
Right, but that can come back to bite you later.
Yeah, when you need to make changes or add new features.
Exactly. It becomes a tangled mess.
I guess keep it simple, stupid applies here too.
For sure, simplicity and modularity are key.
All right, so we've talked about building a complete project as the culmination of this whole learning path. What kind of projects would really showcase those advanced skills?
Good question.
Like what would impress you if you saw it on someone's portfolio?
For me, it's less about the specific project and more about the approach.
Gotcha.
Like if I see a project that demonstrates a deep understanding of web services, XML Port efficient design principles, that tells me a lot.
Okay.
For example, something that integrates Business Central with an external e-commerce platform.
Interesting.
Or a custom-built mobile app. That's impressive.
So it's not about building the most complicated thing.
No.
It's about showing that you can solve real business problems.
Exactly, and that you understand how to use the platform effectively.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the technical skills.
Right.
But I want to go back to the role of the developer within a company for a sec.
Okay.
We said they're like architects translating business needs into technical solutions.
Yeah.
But it sounds like there's more to it than that. What are some other essential skills?
Communication is huge.
Communication.
Yeah. You got to be able to explain your ideas clearly to both technical and non-technical people.
Because you'll be working with business users who might not be super tech savvy.
Exactly. You got to speak their language.
Okay, so it's not just about being a coding whiz.
Right.
You got to be a good communicator, too.
And a good problem solver.
Ah, yes, problem solving.
You're going to run into all sorts of roadblocks.
Yeah.
You got to be able to think critically and find solutions.
And, of course, a willingness to learn and adapt.
Absolutely. The tech world is always changing.
Yes, stay up to date.
Yeah, for sure.
This all sounds pretty challenging, but also really rewarding.
Oh, yeah.
You're using your skills to make a real impact.
Exactly.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah, we have.
Let's take a quick break.
Oh.
And then come back to wrap up our deep dive. All right, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into this Business Central learning path.
Sounds good.
We talked a lot about, technical skills and stuff.
Yeah.
But there's one thing that Dr. Kamathi keeps coming back to.
Okay.
That I think is super important to emphasize.
What's that?
Practice.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Like, it's not enough to just watch videos and read tutorials.
Right. You got to actually get your hands dirty.
Yeah, exactly. You have to write code.
It's like learning to play an instrument.
Okay.
You can watch all the YouTube videos in the world.
Yeah.
But until you actually pick up the guitar and start strumming.
You're not going to learn anything.
Exactly.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And I think Business Central is actually a pretty good platform for that.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like you can create a sandbox environment.
Right.
And just play around without breaking anything.
It's a great way to learn.
So what would you say to someone who's feeling a little intimidated by all this? Like what's a good first step?
I'd say start with a small project. Something you're interested in.
Okay.
Could be anything, really.
Like what?
Like a simple inventory tracking system.
Yeah.
Or a contact management app.
Okay.
The point is to just get comfortable with the tools and the process.
Right. It's about the journey, not the destination.
Exactly.
And coding is definitely a journey.
There's always something new to learn.
So true.
And that's what makes it fun.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So as we wrap up this deep dive, any final thoughts or key takeaways?
I'd say the biggest takeaway is that becoming a Business Central developer is totally doable.
Okay.
It's not some impossible dream.
Anyone can do it.
If you're willing to put in the work.
Yeah. Hard work and dedication.
And don't be afraid to make mistakes.
That's how you learn.
Exactly.
And there are tons of resources out there to help you.
The Business Central community is great.
Yeah. Super supportive.
So don't be shy about asking for help.
And most importantly, have fun.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Building software should be enjoyable.
It's a creative process.
So go out there and build something amazing.
I like it.
All right. That's it for this episode of Deep Dive.
It's been fun.
Hope you enjoyed our exploration of Business Central development.
Me too.
Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep